Hello, viewers, and welcome again to Jaama FM, our online radio vision station here at the Gateway, Abiding God Ministries here in the Gambia. As I told you, this part of what we're doing is just chatting with different people, people who are making a difference, people who are trying to make a difference, people who we want to encourage to make a difference. Because sometimes the mainstream narrative can be one of a lot of rhetoric and sometimes vitriolic language, and people outside may think that we are just a sort of warring tribes and people just fighting ourselves. But there's a great thing happening in this country from various angles. Maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll have little children here with me to talk about their aspirations. I have somebody who is, by every standard, a living legend, in my opinion. And maybe I'll say he's a son, he's a brother, he is a loving husband. I am sure he's a doting daddy. He is a doctor. He is a surgeon. He is the head of orthopedics at EFSTH in Devan Clinic. He is the medical director of Westfield Clinic. He is none other than Dr. Kebba Marenah. I have great respect for Dr. Marenah because he fixed my left shoulder and my right knee, and one of these days I'm going to take my pocket to him so he can fix my pocket, because he has this King Midas effect that when he touches this it works, when he touches the knee it works, so he has to touch my pocket. Dr. Marenah, thank you for joining us on Jaama FM.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to chat, Doc. I have many things to share with you and ask you, because the first one is, I didn't know much about your dad, but your mom at MRC was one of the best things that happened to MRC. Sister Marenah, we can't forget. I know she had a group of friends, but there was just something about your mom. So you never thought of architecture, you never thought of music, you never thought of geography, IT, basketball?
I thought of many things, and actually, to being honest, growing up I was a little bit rebellious in a way. And the fact that everybody assumed my father was a doctor, my mother was a nurse, I lived in MRC.
Wow.
I had to become a doctor.
Oh, Lord.
And that alone made me think that I didn't want to do it because that's what people expected.
Wow.
But, I mean, what I wanted to be was an engineer. I like working with my hands, I like fixing things. And as we see, I've come full circle to that.
Yep.
I still do that, but I do that with people. I'm not sure exactly when it changed, probably around Form 5. There was nothing particular. I just had a moment where I thought everything that I'm doing, subjects I'm studying, it was all pointing towards medicine. And actually, deep down.
And you were good in them too,
deep
I'm
down,
sure.
I really did. I think I really did like it.
So did you do A-levels or you left after O-levels?
I left after GCSEs at
Okay.
Marenah, IGCSE.
Okay, IGCSE.
And then I did my A-levels in the UK.
Wow.
And then I went to medical school there. And then trained for another 12 years.
Wow.
And then came home after 20 years in the UK.
Wow. Right. So what was the culture shock when you came home?
I prepared myself.
Okay.
So I always, from the start, I always knew that I was going to come home. I was looking for the right time when I wanted to reach my peak. I wanted to make sure I was maximally trained before I actually came home.
Wow.
And when I got to that stage, I decided that I would break myself in gently. So for the last 18 months or so before I came home, I would come every 3 months and spend 2 weeks.
Wow.
And work in the hospital. So that sort of at least got me ready for what I was going to expect.
Were you married then?
I'm
just wondering whether your wife
I'm
not coming home. Well, don't worry, Doc, I'm like that. I
so,
forget the dates too.
So that happened. I wasn't at that time. I wasn't married. So I was previously married in the UK.
So you knew coming was not a problem. Now, what was the lure to keep you back there? Because really, we know. I mean, I love my country. You love your country. You came back. I'm here. But the tools you need probably are not as readily available as they are for the full-blown, full-cylinder Dr. Kebba Marenah. So why didn't you stay back?
I felt that I would have more of an impact here, and on a personal level, that it would be more fulfilling to be here. So all those trips I was taking to come back home when I left, nothing stopped moving. Everybody, my place gets filled up very easily. I leave for 2 weeks, someone steps into the gap. There was enough of us to be able to make it work.
That's right.
On the other hand, when I come for 2 weeks here, I do so much. When I leave, there's a huge gap that's
Waiting
left
for you
behind.
to come back. Wow.
So that itself started becoming more motivation because I realized how important it was for me to be here and not there.
In your career, has there been any time when you and your dad worked together and he said, no, do it like that, son? And you said, Dad, look, that's 20th century. This is how we do it. Was there any time like that? Or even your mom?
Yes, my dad and I had a lot of those discussions. We have lots of heated discussions. My mom would walk out of the room. But I'd always say to him, medicine evolves. You have to change. You have to learn, and you have to learn the newer things. And he'd tell me, the human body doesn't change.
Oh.
The way I studied in 1965 is it's the same human body now.
I was 1 year older. And is this going to be generational, or is it going to skip a generation?
I would say my parents encouraged me to study medicine, and I don't think I would encourage my children to.
Why not?
If they chose to and they came to me and said, Dad, I want to be a doctor, I would then encourage them into doing it. But I wouldn't push it on them. I'd want them to make their own choice. I think I made my own choice. Maybe subliminally, somehow I didn't. But I think medicine is very different to how it used to be. If you hear the old surgeons, someone like my dad speak, when I was growing up, it always used to be, a doctor's son doesn't dress like this, a doctor doesn't do this, doesn't do that.
Oh, Lord.
But there was this amount of prestige and respect that came with the profession.
They used to wear bow ties and things like that.
And we don't have that. I
don't think I ever remember seeing you in a bow tie.
No. Yes, I remember coming home again, my dad would say, why are you not wearing a tie? Why are you not dressed like this? But I think, there was that, but I think, as I said, the profession was a lot more respected. There was a lot more autonomy that doctors had, and now you don't have that anymore. So it makes working life difficult, and this has changed, not just in Gambia, it's changed in the UK as well, where administrators were the ones running things and doctors had smaller roles. Most of them didn't have offices anymore.
Wow.
If you see me now at Nemban, I just walk around carrying my bag. I don't even have anywhere to sit down. It's changing. You're still a servant of the people, but it's a bit different. I think you have to love the profession to be able to do it. As I tell people when I go to careers days, if you don't love it, you'll go home many nights hating the fact that you chose to do it.
Wow.
And you have to have that passion. So if you have the passion, I'd encourage it. If you don't, stay far away.
Wow. So growing up as a young boy, Mom had late nights, Dad was on call. You didn't have any dislike for this thing? Or you just managed?
I think my parents did a very good job of, I wouldn't say masking it, but they made sure they were always available somehow.
Okay. So you had quality family time?
Yes. My father would come home from work. He had a clinic, and he'd come home, and if he had house calls to do or hotel calls, he'd take me along. And that's when we got to spend time together.
Right, okay.
So we'd spend time in the car.
He got you where he wanted you.
So yeah, we managed to spend time. We had the weekends. So growing up, I didn't feel like their work got in the way. Okay. Well, we're a family of 4. I have only one sibling. So.
Okay. So it's not the same for you, Dr. Marenah. You are in super high demand everywhere, and everybody gets upset. Call now, PM, lala. He told me to wait for him at Ndemban. I waited for 5 hours. How do you manage all that?
It's very difficult. I have this anecdote that happened to me. Maybe 2 years after I came home. I came home late one night, and my dad walked in and looked at me and said, "Don't you think you're overworking yourself?" And that was a wake-up for me, because throughout my life, I've never known anybody to work as hard as my dad. And for me, he was a workaholic.
For him,
and for him to tell me, "Don't you think you're overworking yourself?" was a real wake-up call. And my response is, I know I can't do this forever. I know I'm not going to do it for another 4 years. But for now, whilst I still have the energy, I will give it my all, because I have goals that I want to achieve. And then I have to start thinking and looking after myself.
Wow. So what are your hobbies, Doc? Please,
I don't have time for.
You used to have something called memes way back in the day. I hope you
Oh,
don't
yes,
read things like that.
No, I don't.
Tennis?
I switch off on Sundays. So I work probably 15 hours a day, Monday to Saturday.
How was I thinking I could invite you to church? Now you switch off on Sundays.
So on Sundays, that's always the day that people will try and call me, and it doesn't matter what.
You're not
I
going to
will
take
not
it.
touch my phone.
So not even the Hippocratic oath will tell you just pick it. It could be somebody calling you, State House.
No.
Yeah.
So Sundays is the day I try to not do anything. I stay at home, I be with family, I go and visit my father and my sister.
Yeah. And in fairness too, because I know restaurants that close on Mondays, so you ask them, so the machines have to rest. And we get upset though, because, your machine cannot be resting when I need the machine to go. So you shut down,
Yes.
really shut down.
Yes, I do. I don't think about work.
If the in-laws are not feeling well,
I don't think that hasn't happened yet.
I thought you were going to say there are other doctors. I was going to say no. There's only one Kebba.
I try, and I mean most of the things. I'm lucky that I'm in a profession that really has dire emergencies.
Okay.
To the person who has it, to the person that's in pain, it's an emergency. But I know it's not going to kill you.
I know.
It can wait till tomorrow.
Oh,
my peace of mind, my sanity is important, and my family life is important. I mean, sometimes I was joking with someone the other day. He said, if I don't go home early tonight from the clinic, I won't have seen my daughter for 2 days. I said, my children haven't seen me for 4 days because I leave for work when they're asleep and I get home when they're back asleep. So if I don't take my day off on Sunday, when do they see me?
Wow. So let's move on to this field where it appears to me you use hammers, hacksaws, chainsaws, whatever, you almost like brutalizing people. How does that feel? What was your first experience when ching, ching? This is God's property. How did you ease into that emotionally?
I'm not sure. I don't remember my first exposure to it, but I think I've always been very. So my father was or is retired now, but an eye surgeon.
Okay.
And I remember on one occasion seeing him inject an eye.
Oh Lord.
And that was the first time I felt uncomfortable watching something happen. Most things don't faze me. So usually I'm pretty fine with most things. And again, for me, it's the outcome. And people say, isn't it strange using a hammer, using a saw? And I say, but remember, this person couldn't walk yesterday and tomorrow they will walk. Well, so okay. the hammer justifies, the use of it justifies it.
The other thing is that I know things like total hip replacements and things, sometimes they go for 4 hours. Those days, you stand for 4 hours?
Yes. Yes, you stand for 4 hours, and I'm sure most doctors probably tell you they don't feel it. You feel it afterwards. When you go home, you realize that you wake up the next day and you know you've stood for 6 hours. But whilst you're doing it, you're so focused in what you're doing, time flies. Sometimes I look up and I can't really believe it's been 4 hours.
And you do more than one sometimes?
Yes, we do it. Hip replacements now, it's a 90-minute operation. I mean, the ones I do now, I do in 90 minutes. So I can do 2 or 3. But we have this thing where I operate on weekends at Westfield. And typically we'll do this past Sunday. It was an odd Sunday.
Okay.
I worked on Saturday, so I had to do Sunday for a reason. But we did nine surgeries. We started at 10 in the morning and finished at 10 in the evening. And that's usually a typical Saturday for me. It's doing 6, 7.
And when do they start moving?
The very next day. On Sunday, we have the physiotherapists there. They walk, they move. 2 days later, they're out of the hospital. So it's rewarding to see. I always say whenever I do a long day of operations, and I feel really tired at the end, just going to the ward and seeing the patients that are operating in the morning takes the tiredness away. When you see the person moving their leg and telling you thank you.
So 90 minutes. So are we seeing Gambia qualifying as a medical tourism place? Is it possible?
We're working on it. We've already, we have operated from people as far as Nigeria, had a few from Sierra Leone, some from Liberia. Someone tracked me down from Guinea-Bissau. So we're working on it.
Okay. That's
It's just getting the package, the rest of it around it.
Yeah. So how do you go around that? Especially post-op. How Because that, I think, is...
Yes. So, I mean, I have a very good physiotherapist that works with me, and we have a physiotherapy unit at Westfield as well now.
Okay.
So, we're looking at internationalizing it a little bit, getting leaflets and the follow-up in terms of physiotherapy is quite good. We have a good way follow-up for the dressings that are required. So it's just accommodation and other things that we need to add into it and make it a full package.
I was told many years ago, I don't know because I really know little about this, but sometimes the prosthesis can last for like 10 years or something like that? It's still the same?
Up to 20 or 25 years.
Wow.
If done properly and you use the proper one. So
that's not good for business, Doc. I'm sorry. I'm not a doctor.
There's more than enough. They become the advert for you. When they tell people, I did this 10 years ago, a lot of people come to you. So, I mean, the first one I did is 5 years ago, and those ones are still doing fine. So.
And knee replacements too?
Knee replacements we started doing, I think, 2 years ago. And I've only done about 20 so far, but that's because of the cost. Whereas with the hips, I've done about 80.
Wow. Okay. Anybody in training?
Yes. I mean, so I said I had targets that I wanted to achieve when I came back. I came back to almost not having a unit to speak of at EFSTH. And the plan for me was to make something that was sustainable, so that if I walked away at 5 years or 6 years, that it would go on. And part of that was making sure that I had more of me, which is not a typical thing to do here. People don't really have succession plans. They don't want people,
and they go with it.
And they try not to have people to the same level as them.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it would be more of a success if the ones I leave behind are better than I was.
That's right. No success without a successor.
So we've successfully now got to the point where the West African College came 2 years ago and looked at what we had, and they accredited us for training. So we're able to train in country. We currently have 4 doctors in training in country.
Wow.
Who can go all the way to the final stages of training, mostly in Gambia. Out of the 6 years, they only have to spend, I think, 18 months outside. And with some partners, we also have 2 doctors in Malawi who are training. And they will come back, hopefully one this year and one next year, specialist. So from 1 in 2018, would be 5 by 20. So there's one that we trained earlier also.
Okay.
So he came back, we helped sponsor him. He went to Russia to train and he came back. So 2025, we have 5, and then hopefully more in the pipeline.
Wow. Somebody told me that surgeons, sometimes when they're operating, they like to listen to classical music or things. Are you one of them, or you are just quiet, no noise, scalpel, this, that?
My theater is noisy. I wouldn't call it classical music, but it's not. it's noisy.
Okay.
Like my father, who studied in the USSR, and he used to listen to Tchaikovsky and things like that. I grew up listening to that, but no, my theater is there's the rap and the reggae and other things in the background. I have music on.
So what does that do for you?
It calms me. I feel I'm more focused when it's a distracting noise.
Okay.
And I also like to stay calm and also be happy and jovial whilst I'm operating. I laugh when I crack jokes. I'm not one of those very serious surgeons. Most people will tell you they haven't really ever heard me shout. If something goes wrong, I would laugh about it instead of stressing about it, because I feel that it doesn't affect my outcome then. If I'm worrying about other things and getting stressed, then my outcome gets affected.
Dr. Marenah has served not once, not twice, not 3 times as one of the 8 judges we have at the Forbes Academy when we finish our segment 3 training. We had a particular graduation exam when a doctor who came for training was speaking, and she froze and she started shaking, and we were all shocked. And so we calmed her down and she finished. Then I remember it was Mrs. Ami Bensida that asked her, so what happened to you? She said, I was speaking, then my eyes met Dr. Marenah's eyes and I blanked out. And then he said, yeah, I know my face causes that. So here you are telling me that you laugh, you are jovial, but that lady froze that day. She said she pictured you doing her Viva or something, and she just blanked out. You have that effect on people.
I say that I've misunderstood. Apparently I have a face that people feel is unapproachable and that I'm very stern. So They say inner circle, the close circle that work with me, they
Yeah.
know. They know what I'm like, and they know they can laugh and joke with me. They tease me in theater. There's no boss. We're all on the same level, and that's how I am.
Wow.
But from the outside, I know people look at me and just think, he's this very extra serious person. I can't joke with him. I can't laugh with him. He probably doesn't even talk, and he's probably very strict. And others will tell you I'm the opposite of that.
Well, but that day, I can't forget that day. She said
But I
that
guess I do what I call compartmentalizing as
you
well.
compartmentalize. Okay.
If we're in a serious situation, we're in a serious situation. In an exam, I'm your examiner. The moment we leave the exam hall, I'll joke about the question you didn't answer. But that's the way I am.
And she just froze. That day was something. Doc, orthopedic sandals, are they really, do they deliver or is it just a hype?
A gimmick, I would call it. I think a lot of things are. It's all marketing. It's consumerism. You make them because it's like supplements. You tell people.
No, don't go there. Don't go there, Doc. We didn't hear him. Don't. This is big pharma talking here.
Yeah.
So really, because I've been looking at them thinking that they're worth trying.
I think it's interesting when you think about how we've developed as people. We're almost correcting problems that we caused ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
All the problems people say they have flat feet. When people are walking around without shoes, flat feet weren't a problem. It's only when they created shoes that had arches, then people with flat feet got
That's
problems.
right.
So again, being natural in a way is actually better. But I'm sure that they do help in certain situations, but they're not for everybody. And there are specific conditions with feet that people have.
Yeah.
And there's specific insoles or shoes that you require.
Yeah. And I noticed that Crocs are now all over the place.
Yeah, one.
So it's another one.
As I'm wearing some myself.
Oh yeah, well, no, we can understand when you wear them.
Yes.
But I see people AM to PM in Crocs. Is it a fashion or do you feel like they're encroaching into sacred territory?
I think it's a fashion, but I think when you wear them, you realize how comfortable they are. And for any situation, you
There are
can
all
drive
kinds
in
of
them,
colors
you can
too.
do it. So, well,
I saw a guy putting on pink Crocs and I thought, come
and
on.
you can
How
accessorize,
could you?
accessorize them as well. So my daughters used to love them, so they're nice.
Would you open your own private hospital somewhere along the line specifically for what did they used to call it? TFH, something, total hip, THR?
THR. I think I would find it hard. I always say I'm not a businessman. I can never never be a businessman.
Okay, I get that. So
if I had someone came up to me as a backer and said, I have a lot of money and I just want to help people.
then you'll do it.
Can you make a hospital? Can you run a hospital? Can we do something? So we have a project and run a hospital. Don't worry about income. Just want you to treat people. Then I would do it.
You'll do it. All right. So I know this is not going to happen, but what if mom is late and bless her soul. Dad called and said, son, Shimbena Jarbat in Kudang, he needs a total hip replacement. Just do it for the family.
Yes. The difficulty with that is the implant. And the implant has to be bought.
Okay.
I do a lot of free surgeries. And often I see people privately. I shouldn't say this on air, but I see a lot of people privately. And I almost always give you the option. And I'll tell you, it's the same surgeon, the same equipment. You can have it in a government hospital for free with the things that come with being in a government hospital. Or you can do it here and it's your choice. I don't mind. You either pay me for it or you don't pay me for it and I'll still do the surgery. And also that's one of the reasons why I'm at Westfield and why I like being there. It's not about money, it's a charity. Yeah. And we're able to do pro bono cases. So when I have a long list, I add a child or somebody that I think I see can't afford it and I'd happily operate for free. So yes.
So you can't do your own private thing. You'll be broke.
So in short, I operate for free. So that's why I couldn't run a private thing where there was money and profit involved.
And if the Spanish team engage your services, they just won UEFA and You know, they are now shouting with their lamin and everybody, and they engage your services, doc. Now, let's be honest. Doc, they want to give you something like 250K.
It would have to be at the right time. So
Doc, there's no right time for money. Money's time is always now.
There is. I mean, so an example, before I came home, I got an implant for the Gambia, a nail, and I had to go to Sierra Leone for the training. And I went to a private hospital, or an NGO hospital there, an Italian NGO hospital. And then I spent 2 weeks, and at the end of the 2 weeks, they organized a little party for me. Wow. And the purpose of the party was to try and convince me to stay. So they all kept coming out to me saying, we know what you want to do, we know you want to go home, we know it's noble, but your services will be very useful here, and we'd pay you a handsome amount, I would say. And I said, no, thank you. I have a purpose, I have something that I'm going to do.
So what did you discuss it with the family and...
Well, I don't tell them this.
I don't blame you.
There'll be more pressure if I have to do that. I mean, even now, so I do have opportunities to go elsewhere, I could go to the Middle East and earn a lot more than what I'm earning here. I spent 6 weeks in Dubai last year, and
you
even
probably
then,
made a whole lot more than you make here in a lifetime.
And even there, 6 weeks there, and they were telling me, people were going to offer me jobs, but I think until I finish what I've started, I don't think it's the right time for me to leave.
Okay.
It needs to be able to stand on its own without me.
If not, you're not gone. You'll be coming back all the time.
If not, I haven't achieved anything. I've spent 6 years and then I haven't achieved anything. It needs to be able to continue and be strong without me.
What would you say is the greatest misconception about orthopedics, and maybe you, the orthopedist in Gambia? I'm asking that question because I think of when I had Mrs. Sagarchum, lawyer Sagarchum, seated here, and I told her, in Gambia we grew up knowing that the prosecution had its lawyer, maybe the DPP, and then the defense, and they argued, and then later we saw them chatting out. So we had this Kijana Suma case. Those kinds of misconceptions. What is it for with orthopedic surgery here? Anything?
With us, I think there is a misconception in part sown by the traditional bone setters, who almost feel that we're in competition with them. And I don't feel there's much of a competition. But there is this conception. I mean, I saw a patient the other week who said to me, I've ignored everybody to come here because they told me that if I come to you, things will go wrong. And the bone setter even told me they'll cut your leg if you go to hospital. And we get a lot of those. We have a patient currently in Lemban who may have to have his leg amputated because he went to a bone setter. But the narrative would always be, the bone setter would tell him as he's going to the hospital, if you go to hospital, they will amputate your leg.
When they've already
Which, of course, we will do because that's the only option with what he's come with. And then go back and say, see, this is what we told you. When you go to the hospital, they cut your leg.
Yeah.
And
is there no interface between?
There isn't yet. We're working on it. So one of my colleagues and I also are working on a study where we're looking at bone setters and trying to localize them and seeing how we might be able to approach them, the ones that are approachable, to see how we can improve what they do. It's never going to be an us or them situation where one is doing it and the other one isn't. We can't stop the practice. It's too entrenched, but we have to work with them to see how we make them safer. But yeah, there's that belief that a lot of the things we do either don't work or for various reasons. So the other one is metal. They tell you, if you have metal in my body, they told me it will cause cancer, it will kill me, it will do this, it will do that. And people refuse to have their bones fixed for that reason.
So you still use titanium caps? Oh.
We use, some of the implants we use are stainless steel, some of them are titanium. But, they're highly, I use money to convince people, and I tell them that, this plate I'm putting in you costs $18,000. Then it's not something I just got from a scrapyard. Yeah. You should believe that it was engineered for a specific reason.
That's right. Yeah.
But yes, those are the misconceptions, I think.
So some of us, I wondered when I saw Oscar Pistorius running. Please educate me. Is that really possible?
Yes, it's very possible. It's again that's another big issue we have to fight with a lot. You know, I think in my first week it was one of the wake up calls. I saw a young lady with bone cancer, and option was amputate. She was 16 or 17, and she looked me in the eye, a very serious face, and said to me, "I would rather die with two legs than live with one leg." And there's a lot of that. People
that especially
misunderstand, or there's this stigma around having an amputation or losing a part of your body. And man, there's some good charities that are working on it. And when the children, especially with the children, when they see how they're left behind and their peers are running around playing football with their prosthesis, all of a sudden they come to you and say, "You know what, this leg that we've been trying to heal for 2 years, just take it off. I'll be free and I'll be able to run around with my friends."
But obviously you take them through counseling.
They do. You do. But even being with others is part of the counseling.
Yeah.
But you try and counsel. I would say that's one of the difficulties working here, where in the West, I am the surgeon.
Okay. So there's a lot of people talking here. Cross-counseling.
Other people do things that they're supposed to do. Here, I have to do everything. I have to be the counselor, I have to be the surgeon, I have to be the engineer, I have to be the DIY man. Wow. It's different. So sometimes there's not enough time, and a lot of Gambian doctors have a reputation for not really speaking to their patients. Sometimes it's a time issue, but I think there's some culture in it as well that we can change. But we do need to be able to talk to them a bit more and explain to them a bit more. The time often doesn't allow, but you give them reasonable options, and I think when you give them time, they come back to you and they're okay with it.
So what is it like with little children, like K-legged, club feet, kids like that? Yeah. You're able to straighten them out?
Yes, we do. We are able to. There's small operations, bigger operations, and I always say the world isn't fair. It always seems to be the less privileged and the poorer children that always have those problems, and that's just the way it tends to be. So,
is it an early detection problem, or it's just?
There's some nutritional element to it, maybe some genetics to it, but so those are the ones I tend to help for free a lot of the time. Okay. I do those operations. My consultation for children is this lowest of all mine. Wow. I lower my operation fees for kids because I just want to give them that chance. It's not their fault. Most of the time, decisions were made for them.
That's right.
That have put them in issues. So we have to try and help them. They're the future.
And I'm sure when you see them running, it's
it's seeing a child recover is one of the best feelings.
I can imagine. Wow. So I also know that, but from movies, sometimes a bullet is shot at somebody's neck or somewhere, and they say that they leave it where the bullet is. If you touch it, the child would have spinal something. Wait until they are 10, 20. You have that kind of thing in orthopedics too?
Bullets are becoming more common, unfortunately.
Scratching people's ears too.
There's this thing that, so it's, we from the injuries that we receive from gunshots, the bullet is fired and it's supposed to be very hot.
Yeah.
So it's almost sterile. So if you leave it where it is, it causes few problems. And you're better off often leaving than going searching for it, because you can cause more damage. So unless there's a very good reason, we do just leave them where they are.
So you know people with bullets, they're walking around with their bullets?
Yes, well, the fragments at least. What
happens to them when they go through metal detectors? It's like America.
They pick that up. But I mean, now they have all these newer scanners, of course, the ones where you put your hands up.
Yes.
So even with the implants, in the past you have to give somebody a paper saying you have this, whereas now they can see what it is they have on them.
Wow. So you've done a total of maybe 100 combined knee and hip replacements?
Yes.
Which is your best example, doctor?
Best example?
The best, the real top out of all the top ones.
As a patient, so the hip replacements do much better as an operation than knees. Knee replacements are still a little bit painful and uncomfortable afterwards. They are far better than they were before surgery.
Yeah.
But the hips are the best. There's a lady from Bakau that I operated on. she had very severe arthritis. And we did one hip. And she came back 3 months later and did the other hip. And she's one of the most successful, I'd say. About after a year, she came back to me, and I thought, oh no, there's a problem. What did she come back for? And she said, no, I'm fine. I just want to go back to selling at the market. And I want to know whether I can go back to doing that.
Wow.
And I said, please, by all means.
But wouldn't she need to have like a raised seat
Yes,
and all that?
so we talked about the precautions and things she needs to do. But she is now 3 years, I think, from her first one. And every time she comes to see me, she's just happy and fine. There's a few others I've done both sides for, but she's one that always sticks out. She's just able to go back to her life.
If we go back, Doc, to when you left to the UK to study, and at that point, there was a full-blown scholarship for engineering at MIT, and there was a full-blown scholarship for medicine, Royal Fleas, and the places in the UK. What hindsight?
At the time I was leaving, I think I was decided. I was decided. I mean, when I went to my sixth form, I did biology, chemistry, and maths, which is what you needed for medicine. And I insisted I wanted to do a fourth subject. I wanted to do computer science, just because I enjoyed it. And they said there was no space in the timetable, so I dropped it. But my path was chosen by that point. I definitely wanted to do medicine, and that's the route I went down. I'm one of those people, when I decide to do, my wife will say I'm very stubborn, but when I decide I'm going to do it, I'll find a way, and I'll do it.
So let's bring this to a close. Dinner table, breakfast, lunch, Sunday, family time, no medical talk. You don't look at your wife and kids as, okay, the acetabulum is like this and the femur is like that.
My wife is a doctor, but it's not non-medical because I complain about work. I complain about, if I'm going to talk about the things that stress me, the things that are giving me, I won't say anxiety, but stress in my life, it's always going to come back to work, because I spend most of my time working.
But is it English or medical
English? It's English. We don't talk about patients. We rarely talk about patients at home, even though our fields overlap a lot. It's not something we do. I try and keep, and of course with the children, sometimes I was surprised when my son was at school and they said, what does your dad do? And he said he's a doctor. And I said, I'm surprised he knows, because I don't talk about it and I don't tell him I'm a doctor. Because I'm not trying to encourage.
Well, the people talk about it, Dr. Marenah, Dr. Marenah, doctor,
yes.
Doctor.
I've had referrals from the school already. The children have come from there. They said, go to Hassan's father.
Oh, wow. So how have you handled your most intransigent patient? Have you had one?
I've had a few.
Have you had racial prejudice?
Not here. In England, I have had a few. I've had it many times, and I'm usually very calm. So the situation tends to happen that it's the people around me who get more upset about what's being said than I am, or at least than I show. And sometimes they ask me afterwards, why are we getting angry on your behalf? And at the end of the day, for me, it's a patient. And yes, there are racists. But again, when someone is in hospital, that for them is one of the worst possible times for them. When you have to understand that psychologically they are going through a lot. And you accommodate for that a little bit. And they may apologize afterwards, or they may not. But again, I'm a God-fearing person, and I leave everything to the higher being. Whatever, what someone feels or what someone says is never really going to have an effect on how I'm going to behave.
That's very professional. Because I was going to say, if somebody threw pillows at you and threw some tea at you and,
No, I've had people shout at me. And, I mean, there was one particular incident I remember in East Surrey where I was working, where it was in the middle of an A&E. And I went in to see a patient, and she just screamed expletives, racial, at me. And I just stood and looked at her. And the whole of the emergency department came down, and the consultant took me away. And I was going to go back and see the patient. He said, no, you don't need to. Somebody else will go and see the patient. And I said, yes, she said what she said, but it's not going to change the fact that
define you.
It's not going to change me treating her. I'm not going to be any different when I treat her. But yeah, so I didn't end up seeing her again. But people thought I might behave differently. And you get this reputation as a black man. You also not expected to, but you're thought that you're going to behave angrily.
Yeah.
And I don't. And other people always say how calm I am. And
That's good.
I think you need that to also stand out. You
That's
know,
good, yeah.
my colleagues where I used to work now come to Gambia twice a year, a group of 20 of them to do surgeries. And I think it's because that's partly because of the impression that I left with them.
Oh, thank you. That's good. So have you ever cried for losing a patient, or? I'm still trying to get the soft
Soft side of me.
side, because I remember that doctor, and I mean, she was shaking, and I thought, the man is sitting here. But she said, I saw his face. So,
luckily in orthopedics, we don't lose patients that often, so I don't have to think about that much. The junior doctors, when we talk, I always tell them, as a doctor, you always remember the first patient that died. I won't say that you killed,
yeah.
but that you were treating, and maybe we always blame ourselves.
Okay.
And part of you always feel, maybe I could have done something differently, and maybe they might have survived. And those patients stay with you. My first one was 2006, so 16 years ago. But you still remember. You still remember them. You even remember names sometimes. You remember funny details about them. So you don't forget. And as hard as people think we are, you carry a lot around with you.
But you compartmentalize.
You have to. I mean,
the next day you still
there are
go
memes you see on TikTok and things now, and it's true. You sometimes literally have to go from telling one patient that they are going to die from their condition to moving on to the next and having to laugh with them and talk about what they're going to do within a space of seconds. And you have to learn to be able to do that. And it doesn't make you hard or make you heartless or cold. But it's essential for the next person that you don't take the problems of the last one to them. If I lose a patient during a surgery, if I feel I'm not in the state of mind, I would cancel all surgeries, or I would continue as though nothing happened.
With no apprehensions that something may go wrong with the next one.
No.
Wow. I suppose that's how pilots fly planes too. Really?
Yeah.
So doctors are human. You really...
Yeah, we are human. We are very human, and that's why I said you have to love it, because the days you go home, not necessarily crying, some go home and cry. We all have our ways of letting out grief or letting out stress, but there are days you go home and you're down, and you have to pick yourself up the next morning and come back. And part of it is loving the job and loving what you do and remembering. But life always has its interesting ways. You have a hard week, and then you have a random patient who just walks into your consulting room and reminds you what a good job you've done on them. And then you remember why you're still doing it.
And you move on.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I'm so glad. I was going to study medicine. I don't know. I ended up in biochemistry, and here I am. Dr. Kebba Marenah, thank you so much. Sir, I'm going to ask you, maybe you can look into that camera. What do we need to make surgery and the whole medical thing rise to the place where we want it? I'm a firm believer that even though our country is small, our size can be an advantage, and we've just looked at the possibilities of medical tourism here.
Yeah.
What do we need, one? And two, what can you say to encourage people who, if they're having a hip, a knee, any problem, let them come and not go the other way around when invariably it leads to an amputation?
I think you need a conducive environment, but above that, I think what you need is the people. And I came home. I could have done other things, but my mind was always set to come home, and maybe I'm different. But I think the more people we have staying away and not being here means we'll never get to where we want to be. We can't have all our brightest minds outside of the country, sitting there telling us what we should be doing in the country to make it better.
That's right.
It needs a collective hands to push it forward, and that comes from people. People would say we didn't have hip replacements in Gambia. True, but maybe if I didn't come back today, we'd still not have hip replacements in Gambia.
And yet there are Gambian orthopedic surgeons.
There are. So it takes people to drive change. We want change, but there has to be someone to drive it. There's things that we feel are not available, but they may never become available until somebody says they need them and they need to make it happen. So prostheses weren't available here for prostheses for hip and knee until I started looking for suppliers, and we found someone. We've gone through many, and then we've got them coming regularly. So I think people drive change a lot more than we think. Everybody wants to blame the government and the environment, but the government will respond to what's happening.
That's right.
And the environment.
Demand and supply.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you need that to happen. And with regards to advice for people, I think people, rightly so, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, were worried about coming to hospital with orthopedic issues. There are many horror stories you used to hear. And I think listen to the successes. You know, we have had a lot of successes. We continue to have a lot. And as someone said, I think it was Dr. Jha, I think in one of his interviews, you have to move with the times. In the past, people will tell you that they used to walk from the provinces to the capital because they didn't have cars and there were no roads, or they went by donkey cart. But now you take the bus because it's available, there's a road, and that's what is there. So yes, what you were doing was working before. May not have been perfect, you've had your issues with it, but there is something better. It's modern, and not everything modern is bad. So I think convert to it and come to it, and you will realize that you're definitely making a better decision.
Well, I'll take that advice. So, Doc, if I were going to serve you dinner, what's Dr. Kebba Marenah's favorite? Without Dr. Mrs. Kebba Marenah saying we are prying into, what do you like?
I'm converting to be a seafood person. I like the fact that
Pescatarian?
No, as in I enjoy seafood a lot more now. Okay. So when I was growing up, when my mom cooked fish, that was a bad day for me. But I've started to cherish the things that I didn't have when I left. You know, fine, in England you can get it, but we live in Gambia, we have the sea by us. That's right. It's available. That's you can get fresh calamari, shrimps, fish, and that's what I love. You know, having
so
fresh.
Did you go down the part of Nenengunja those days, Pine?
Yes, I did all that.
You did all that?
I did.
Just so that we know that he's normal and he's Gambian.
I did.
So you did the Pine thing?
I'm the...
grown soup?
All of it.
Flocks?
I grew up in MRC. I went to Marenah all my life. So everybody has this conception that I'm a certain type of person.
I know.
And if you know my family, a lot of people, when I say I'm a nigga, a lot of people tell me, you're not Aku. And my father was brought up by...
Do you speak Aku by any chance?
I understand it. I don't, but, so it's just one of those things that people have a conception about the type of person I am. I lived a full life. I'm from a village, Kudang. I used to spend my holidays in the village.
So Musgarite Dix?
Never Dix, no.
That's where I'm up on you. Me, I'm a Dipakunda boy.
Never Dix, but we used to go to what we call the Dalo, the streams, with the donkey cart.
And you do the thing, catching the tilapia fish?
Yeah, donkey cart riding, all of that. I've lived a full life.
Have you done Ruh?
Yes, with the
Baobab?
Baobab, yes.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, so he qualifies. But finally, doctor, tell me you don't touch Ebe. Please. Oh, Lord.
That's my comfort food.
What?
Ebe. It's...
the surgeon eats Ebe?
Yes, I do. And I take my omeprazole after I eat it.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a sweet chat with our number one orthopedic surgeon in the country, Dr. Kebba Marenah. And I know he's not just known here. He's known in many places, can stand tall anywhere. So just to say, we are so grateful that you came home. And I believe what you said, the more we have a better critical mass, the more we push for change, the more change will happen. Complaining, ranting on social media would not give us the answer. Thank you so much for coming. We love you. We celebrate you. Stay. I'm not too sure of these 4 years, what you're going to do. I hope it's still in the Gambia, please. If not, Gambians are now good at protesting. We are going to put placards, bring Dr. Marenah back, bring Dr. Marenah back. Sir, thank you so much, Doc, for having you.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Also, please share the link, share Jaama FM Radio Vision, shaping minds, transforming lives. This has been my pleasure to have Dr. Kebba Marenah. And you can follow him on Twitter. He has time. He tweets from time to time. You can is it X? You are on X.
X now.
X. Tweet X. It's been scrolled. I think it's at Dr. Kebson.
Yes.
and follow. He drops bombs, and that's how I'll put it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll have you some
pleasure.
other time.
Thanks.
And when your team comes, if they want to come in, sir, it's here for you.
Sure.
We also do pro bono. Goodbye. See you later. I have somebody coming, the head of Gambia Methodist Academy School, Mrs. Hannah Harding. How she does it, I don't know, but if I had kids going to school, they will go through there, and if they broke their bones, they will go through Dr. Kebba Marenah. Stay tuned. We'll see you shortly. Pastor Forbes, bye.